When my Uncle Ray died, he left behind a house no one wanted. It wasn't because of the location. It sat at the edge of a quiet suburban street in upstate New York, surrounded by tall pine trees and mist that always seemed to roll in too early and stay too long. It was because of what had happened inside. He died alone, slumped over a chair in the attic with the ceiling fan spinning just inches above his head, casting warped shadows across his lifeless face. The coroner said heart attack. But the whispers among the neighbors told a darker tale. Something about screams in the night, strange figures in the windows, and the fact that Ray hadn't been seen in public for nearly 3 months before they found him. And even then, it wasn't because someone checked on him. It was because the mailman couldn't handle the smell. I hadn't seen Uncle Ray since I was a teenager. He was always the weird one in the family, obsessed with obscure books, never married, barely spoke at family gatherings. But when his lawyer called to say I was the only living heir, I didn't hesitate. I was broke, newly divorced, and too numb to question a free place to live. So I packed up my Honda Civic and drove the 6 hours north, telling myself it was just a house. Just a house. But the moment I stepped through the front door, something felt wrong. It wasn't the dust or the silence. It was the way the air felt too thick, like it had been holding its breath for months. The living room was untouched, an old recliner facing a black TV screen, faded wallpaper peeling at the corners. There were no family photos. No warmth. Just books. Hundreds of books stacked in messy piles across every surface. Some in languages I didn't recognize. Some with strange symbols on the covers, worn from use but oddly pristine inside, as if only one person had ever read them. The police had already cleared the scene. They took the body, filed a report, and locked up. They missed things, small things. A trail of dark stains leading down to the basement. Scratch marks under the bedroom door. And the smell. Not the rotting kind, but the bitter, metallic tang of something old. Something angry. That first night, I didn't sleep. The attic creaked even though there was no wind. My phone kept losing signal. At 3:11 a.m., I heard footsteps above me. Slow, deliberate footsteps. I held my breath, staring at the ceiling, praying it was just the house settling. It wasn't, because the next morning I found something outside my bedroom door. A key. Old, rusted, ice cold to the touch. Attached to a piece of paper that hadn't been there the night before. It only had 3 words written in messy, frantic handwriting. Don't unlock it. And beneath that a symbol. A crude, hand-drawn circle with jagged lines through it, one I'd seen before. On one of Uncle Ray's books. It wasn't the dust or the silence. It was the way the air felt too thick, like it had been breathing without anyone in it. I stood in the entryway for a long time, holding my breath. The wallpaper was peeling, revealing layers beneath that seemed older than the house itself, floral patterns hiding faded symbols that didn't look like anything you'd find in modern design. The hardwood creaked under my boots, but wasn't the kind of creak that comes from age. It sounded hesitant, as if the house was aware I was inside and trying to decide if it liked that or not. I walked through the ground floor slowly, taking in the old furniture, the musty curtains, and the smell. God, that smell. Like mildew, rotting paper, and something else I couldn't place. Something metallic. It clung to the inside of my nose, made my stomach turn. Everything had been left exactly where Uncle Ray had abandoned it. Mail stacked neatly on the dining room table. A half-used candle burned down to its wick on the mantel. Books, hundreds of them, stacked on shelves and in messy piles on the floor, most of them old and with spines written in languages I didn't understand. Latin. Some even looked handwritten. Others had symbols carved into the covers. I found a picture of him on the side table in the hallway. Uncle Ray was standing outside the house, smiling. But behind him, in the second-floor window, there was a shadow. It didn't look like a person, not exactly, just a long, thin silhouette. I blinked and looked closer, convincing myself it was just a smudge on the glass. But I put the photo face down. I didn't sleep the first night. I lay on the couch, lights on in every room, jumping at every creak and groan the house made. At one point, just after midnight, I could have sworn I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, dragging, like someone walking barefoot. But when I checked, no one was there. The attic door was bolted shut. Not locked, bolted. From the outside. With 3 separate iron latches. That was the first thing that truly chilled me. Because if Uncle Ray had died up there, how the hell had the latches been closed from the outside? I called the local police the next morning, just to ask. They were polite but vague. Yes, sir, the body was discovered in the attic. The door was secured. We had to remove the bolts ourselves. I asked why they'd been bolted from the outside, and the officer hesitated before replying. We assumed he did it himself. Maybe a safety precaution. You know how it is. Older folks, paranoia, etc. He didn't sound convinced. Neither was I. That night, I decided to sleep in the master bedroom, Uncle Ray's room. I wanted to reclaim the house, tell myself it was just walls and wood. But sometime around 3:17 a.m., I woke up gasping for breath. The room was freezing, my skin covered in goosebumps, and there was something heavy pressing on my chest. I couldn't see anything, but I felt it, a presence. Like someone watching me from just inches away. Breathing low and steady. I shot out of bed, turned on the lights, and nothing was there. Except the attic door was unlatched. All 3 bolts. Wide open. And someone, had walked back down into the darkness of the house. Uncle Ray was standing outside the house, smiling. But behind him, in the second-floor window, there was a shadow. It didn't look like a person. Not exactly. Just a vague silhouette, too tall, too thin, head tilted slightly, like it was listening. At first, I thought it might have been a trick of the light or some reflection. But the more I stared, the more I realized it wasn't in the window. It was behind the glass, inside the room. Watching him. Watching me now. I set the photo down, trying to shake the chill that crept up my spine, like icy fingers. The air in the house felt colder suddenly, even though I hadn't touched the thermostat. I told myself I was just tired from the drive and overthinking. Stress plays tricks on the mind. That's what people say, right? I made my way upstairs. The staircase groaned under my weight, and with each step, I had the unmistakable feeling that someone was behind me. I didn't look. Not yet. The upstairs hallway was narrow, with faded yellow wallpaper and strange stains running along the baseboards. I reached the second-floor landing, and everything went quiet. I mean dead quiet. No distant hum of traffic, no birds outside, not even the usual ticking of old plumbing. The door to the master bedroom stood slightly open. I pushed it slowly, the hinges letting out a long, agonized creak. The room was darker than it should have been, as if the light from outside couldn't quite find its way in. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, and the heavy curtains were drawn shut, but even so, the shadows felt wrong. They moved, just a little, in ways they shouldn't have. Like they were aware of me. And then I saw it. On the far wall, carved into the plaster just above the bed frame, was a word I didn't recognize. It wasn't in English, or Latin. It looked ancient, uneven, ragged scratches that gouged through paint and wood alike. As I stepped closer, I realized something even more disturbing. There were nail marks in the wall. Deep, desperate, as if someone had tried to claw their way out of the bed, or maybe away from it. That's when I heard the floorboards behind me creak. Not faintly, not like the house settling. No, this was heavy. Intentional. One step, then another. I turned around slowly. The hallway behind me was empty. Or, at least it looked empty. But the air was different now. It had weight. Pressure. Like something was waiting just beyond sight, standing too still, just out of focus. I didn't know it yet, but that night would be the last time I felt even remotely safe in that house. And I hadn't even found the attic door yet. The room was darker than it should have been, as if the light from outside couldn't quite find the courage to cross the threshold. Dust motes floated in the stale air, barely visible. The window was wide open, but the curtains hung still, unmoving, like the air had frozen inside this place. Something felt wrong in here. The bed was untouched, perfectly made, with hospital corners and a heavy quilt that looked hand-stitched, fraying at the edges. A single old-fashioned lamp sat on the nightstand, but it didn't work when I tried to flick it on. Dead bulb. Maybe. Or maybe this room had decided it didn't want to be lit. There were books stacked neatly against one wall. More of those strange, leather-bound ones with no titles. Some had clasps, like they were meant to stay shut. A few were open, one of them on the floor, surrounded by a circle of salt. My heart skipped. That wasn't the kind of thing you just accidentally leave behind. That was deliberate, purposeful, protective. Why would someone, especially someone like Uncle Ray, feel the need to draw a salt circle in their bedroom? I knelt down to look at the open book. The writing inside wasn't English. It wasn't even anything I recognized. The characters were sharp, jagged, almost like carvings. But the drawings, those I understood. One sketch showed a tall, faceless figure standing in a doorway. Another showed the same figure closer, hands stretched out, fingers too long. The third image made me drop the book. It was the exact layout of a house, right down to the cracks in the floorboards. And in the attic? A red X. I stared up at the ceiling above me. That's where he died. But what was he trying to keep out? Or what was he trying to keep in? One sketch showed a tall, faceless figure standing in a doorway. Another showed the same figure closer, hands stretched out, fingers too long. The last one showed a person lying in bed, and the figure crouched on their chest, its head tilted, as if listening for breath. My breath hitched. I looked around the room again, slowly, afraid of what I might see. But there was nothing. Just the cold, the silence, and the overwhelming sense that something had been here recently. Maybe was still here, watching, just out of sight. That's when I noticed the closet. It was closed. Too clean compared to the rest of the room. The doorknob glinted, polished. I stood up, heart pounding, and placed my hand on it. Cold. Ice cold. I hesitated, but not because I was scared of what was inside. I was scared because there were scratches on the inside. Long, deep gouges carved from the inside of the wooden door. I stepped back, stomach twisting. That wasn't old damage. It was fresh. Tiny splinters still clung to the edges. Uncle Ray didn't die of a heart attack. I knew it now, like my body understood it before my brain could catch up. He'd locked himself in this room, circled himself in salt, and slept with those horrible books for a reason. And when it came for him, he tried to hide in the one place he thought might protect him. But it didn't. And the police, they never opened the attic. That thought hit me hard, cold and sharp like a blade between the ribs. They found him in the attic chair, slumped and silent. But they didn't say anything about what was around him. They missed the salt lines, the torn pages, the symbols scratched into the wooden beams above. They didn't find the hatch under the attic floorboards. But I did. Later that night, unable to sleep, I climbed into the attic, flashlight trembling in my hand. I found the chair where he died, and just behind it, a wooden panel, slightly loose. I pried it open. The stench hit first, then the cold, and finally the whisper. I can't describe the voice. It wasn't heard, not the way you hear someone speak. It slipped into my head like smoke, like injection, and it said only one word. Stay. I dropped the flashlight. It flickered once before going out, and in the dark, I realized something horrifying. The air behind me was breathing again.